Have you ever felt like you were standing in your own way, constantly tripping over invisible hurdles, or watching a great opportunity slip through your fingers for reasons you just couldn't name? What if I told you that the biggest obstacle preventing you from achieving radical happiness and success isn't external, it's actually a powerful, misunderstood part of you, operating completely outside your conscious awareness? This isn't just a simple bad habit. We are talking about a powerful psychological force known as the shadow self. And for many, it is the actual puppet master behind every frustrating cycle, every moment of self-doubt, and every instance of painful self-sabotage. Stay with me, because today we are going to expose this hidden controller and learn how to finally take back the driver's seat of your own life, moving from unconscious reaction to conscious creation. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we are diving deep into a topic so crucial, yet so often ignored, that it literally dictates the major outcomes of your entire life. Imagine for a moment that there's a secret, powerful co-pilot inside your mind, one you never voted for, making critical decisions when you aren't looking. This isn't science fiction. It's the reality of your shadow self. This hidden aspect of your psyche holds all the traits you decided long ago were unacceptable, unworthy, or even dangerous, stemming primarily from childhood experiences where society, parents, or peers judged those traits harshly. We repress them, lock them away in the basement of our minds, seeking to maintain an idealized image, but those locked doors are weak. And whatever is behind them holds the key to your psychological freedom or, terrifyingly, your continued self-sabotage. Are you ready to finally face the deepest, darkest secret you keep from yourself? The shadow, a term popularized by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, isn't inherently evil, contrary to what the name suggests. It is simply the collection of everything we deny about ourselves, the rejected gold alongside the true darkness. Think about the traits you despise most in other people, perhaps intense jealousy, explosive anger, greed, or even deep vulnerability. Those intense reactions are usually glaring neon signs pointing directly toward your own denied shadow content. We become fiercely critical of others' flaws because confronting them externally is less painful than admitting those very same capacities reside within our own character structure. Understanding this is the first seismic shift in recognizing how the shadow actively works to control your perception of reality, coloring everything you see through a filter of unacknowledged shame. Now, how exactly does this psychological basement resident start controlling your life? It does so through something called projection. Because the shadow traits are too painful or shameful for your conscious mind to accept, your brain pulls a sneaky trick. It projects those unwanted traits onto external people or situations. For example, if you deeply repress your own feelings of inadequacy, you might constantly meet people who seem to you incredibly arrogant and condescending, focusing all your energy on judging their perceived superiority. This projection keeps you busy looking outward, ensuring you never have to look inward and face the root anxiety that you might not be good enough. This continuous cycle of projection means the shadow dictates who you fight with, who you fall in love with, and who you ultimately label as the villain in your life story. The control mechanisms also manifest heavily in your relationships. Have you ever entered a wonderful, healthy relationship only to feel an overwhelming urge to push that person away, pick a senseless fight, or seek out chaos when things are finally peaceful? That, my friends, is pure self-sabotage driven by the shadow. The shadow often holds deeply rooted fears, the fear of abandonment, the fear of true intimacy, or the belief that you are fundamentally unlovable. When a healthy relationship challenges that core belief, the shadow panics, activating defense mechanisms that generate conflict, ensuring the familiar painful script plays out. This unconscious need to prove old pain true is one of the most destructive ways the shadow prevents you from experiencing lasting happiness. demanding control over the emotional thermostat. In the professional realm, the shadow morphs into the crippling voice of the inner critic, meticulously weaving narratives of unworthiness that stop you dead in your tracks. You might have a brilliant idea for a new business, a creative project, or a career leap, but suddenly, the procrastination becomes unbearable, the perfectionism becomes paralyzing, and the fear of failure is absolutely debilitating. These are not character flaws. They are active blockades erected by your shadow to maintain the status quo. Change requires integration, and integration requires facing the discomfort of your repressed fears. By keeping you small, silent, and stuck, the shadow ensures the repressed parts, the parts that fear rejection or public failure, remain safely locked away, maintaining a precarious yet familiar psychological equilibrium. This deep-seated desire for comfort through familiarity, even if that familiarity is painful, is the core control mechanism. The brain prefers the known suffering to the unknown freedom. Think about patterns. Why do you keep chasing partners who are unavailable? Why do you always overspend when you know you shouldn't? Why do you consistently turn down opportunities that would elevate your status? These patterns are deeply ingrained shadow scripts operating on autopilot. They are the unconscious promises you made to yourself in childhood, perhaps to stay small to avoid parental scrutiny, or to be the victim to garner attention. Until you make these scripts conscious, they will continue to control your decisions, ensuring you loop endlessly in predictable, painful cycles. So, how do we begin the challenging, yet essential, process of integrating the shadow and reclaiming control? The first and most critical step is radical awareness, which means actively observing your strongest emotional reactions. When someone makes you disproportionately angry, when a comment wounds you far more than it should, or when you feel intense, sudden jealousy, stop. Instead of reacting externally, ask yourself, what unacknowledged part of myself is this person mirroring back to me right now? This shift from external blame to internal curiosity interrupts the shadow's projection mechanism, forcing the repressed content into the light of consciousness where it can finally be addressed and understood rather than acted out. Next, we must embrace the power of owning the denied qualities. This is often the hardest part because it means admitting you possess traits you deem unacceptable. If you hate manipulative people, you must acknowledge the capacity for manipulation within yourself. If you despise greed, you must recognize your own capacity for desiring abundance, potentially to excess. Owning these capacities is not the same as acting on them. It is simply acknowledging the full spectrum of your human potential. When you own your capacity for darkness, paradoxically, you gain incredible power over it, because it can no longer sneak around behind the scenes, controlling your behavior without your permission. Journaling is a powerful tool in this process, acting as a direct channel to your subconscious mind, bypassing the conscious ego that works tirelessly to keep the shadow hidden. I encourage you to try active imagination journaling. Write a dialogue with your shadow. Ask it, what are you afraid of? What belief are you trying to protect by making me sabotage this good thing? You might be shocked by the raw, honest answers that surface. Your shadow often speaks in the language of fear and hurt from your past, and giving it a voice on paper is the safest way to acknowledge its existence and diminish its controlling influence over your present-day decisions and emotional state. We also need to understand the relationship between the shadow and our creativity and golden shadow. The shadow doesn't just hold the bad stuff. It also holds the gold, those positive, magnificent traits we were told were too much, too loud, or too unique to be acceptable. Maybe you repressed your powerful leadership qualities because, as a child, being a leader meant being isolated or ridiculed. By repressing your darkness, you also repress your light. Integrating the shadow means retrieving this hidden gold, the potential for true genius. Deep compassion and fierce courage that lies dormant, waiting to be used to fulfill your highest potential instead of acting as a subconscious anchor weighing down your ambitions. Think of your emotional reactions as your internal dashboard lights. If you constantly feel overwhelmed, anxious, or perpetually angry, your shadow is driving the car, frantically signaling that its needs are unmet. When we ignore these signals, the shadow doesn't disappear. It escalates its control, leading to explosive outbursts, chronic physical ailments, psychosomatic issues, and increasingly severe patterns of retreat or confrontation. The goal is not to eliminate these feelings, but to sit with the discomfort they bring, treating them not as flaws to be fixed, but as messengers carrying vital information about your underlying psychological needs and historical wounds that still require attention. The journey of shadow work is fundamentally an act of self-love and radical acceptance. For too long, you have been at war with parts of yourself, desperately trying to force yourself into a neat little box defined by societal expectations or past trauma. This internal civil war is exhausting and is the reason you often feel depleted even when you haven't physically exerted yourself. When you choose to accept the totality of who you are, the messy, the broken, the brilliant, and the dark, the need for the shadow to control your life diminishes. Acceptance is the antidote to repression, effectively neutering the unconscious control the shadow holds over your daily choices. One crucial exercise in breaking the shadow's control over your perspective is to practice the reverse projection exercise, particularly when you are judging someone harshly. If you find yourself thinking, "That person is so lazy and irresponsible," immediately flip the script internally and ask, "Where am I being lazy and irresponsible in my own life right now?" Or, if you are focusing on someone's blatant need for attention, look within. Where am I denying my own healthy need for validation and acknowledgement? This constant practice of ownership redirects the energy back into your own growth, pulling the controlling power away from the external world and placing it firmly back inside your sphere of influence. When we talk about deep-seated shadow control, we must address the role of early life trauma. Repression is a survival mechanism. We hide parts of ourselves to feel safe. If, for instance, showing sadness made you vulnerable to attack as a child, your shadow locked away all sadness, creating an adult who is incapable of healthy grieving, leading instead to sudden, inexplicable rage or avoidance. Until you revisit the origins of that repression with compassion and safety, the shadow will continue to dictate your emotional responses, acting like a traumatized child steering an adult body. Healing the root trauma is key to unlocking the rigid control patterns that govern your reactions today. Many people fear shadow work because they believe acknowledging the darkness will make them bad people. This is perhaps the biggest lie the ego perpetuates to maintain its dominance. Integrating your anger doesn't mean you become abusive. It means you gain conscious control over your capacity for powerful boundaries and assertive communication. Integrating your jealousy doesn't mean you become hateful. It means you recognize your deep desire for what others have, allowing you to use that energy as motivation for conscious creation rather than allowing it to fester as toxic resentment that controls your relationships. Integration grants choice where previously there was only automatic, damaging reaction. Let's discuss boundaries, which are often the first casualty of an unchecked shadow. If your shadow holds intense feelings of unworthiness, you will struggle to set firm boundaries, fearing that saying no will result in abandonment or disapproval, thereby reinforcing the belief that you are only valuable when you sacrifice your own needs. The shadow controls your boundaries by making self-sacrifice feel like safety. By consciously identifying the areas where you consistently overgive, you start to reclaim control, telling the shadow that the adult self can handle a little discomfort, a person being upset, in exchange for maintaining personal integrity and self-respect. Diminishing the fear-based control. The physical manifestations of shadow control are also crucial to recognize. Stress, chronic tension in the neck and shoulders, and constant low-level anxiety are often physical indicators that your unconscious mind is working overtime to keep massive amounts of repressed psychological content suppressed. Your body is holding the emotional tension that your mind refuses to process. By engaging in somatic practices like trauma-informed yoga, deep breathing, or even just dancing wildly in your living room, you can release the physical holding patterns that the shadow uses to maintain its grip. This physical liberation is often the fastest way to feel a shift in your psychological state and reclaim your agency. Remember, the goal is wholeness, not perfection. You will never fully dissolve your shadow. It is a lifelong process of integration and dialogue. As you evolve, new parts of your psyche will inevitably retreat into the shadow, requiring continuous observation and acceptance. The victory isn't in erasing the darkness. It's in making the unconscious conscious. Every time you catch yourself projecting, every time you choose conscious action over automatic reaction, you weaken the shadow's controlling grip and strengthen your own sovereignty. This intentional internal observation transforms the energy that was once used for repression into fuel for genuine, powerful self-expression and true potential. The final piece of reclaiming control is accountability without shame. When the shadow inevitably makes you mess up, you snap at a loved one, you cheat on your diet, you procrastinate a crucial task, don't beat yourself up. Shame only sends the shadow deeper underground, increasing its control in the future. Instead, take radical ownership of the action. Understand the root motivation, the fear or trauma that triggered the behavior. Apologize if necessary, and commit to a different response next time. This compassionate accountability breaks the shame cycle, which is the very food that feeds the shadow's desire to maintain hidden control over your life. Ultimately, integrating your shadow is not about becoming dark. It's about becoming whole. It's about taking back the power you unknowingly gave away when you repressed those inconvenient, messy, yet powerful parts of yourself. When you stop fighting your own nature and embrace your full spectrum, you finally tap into true, unstoppable personal power and authentic happiness that isn't dictated by past wounds. If this deep dive resonated with you, if you suddenly realized why you keep making the same mistakes, please do me a huge favor, smash that like button right now. Let me know in the comments below which aspect of your shadow surprised you the most. And subscribe for more psychological deep dives. Share this video with a friend who needs to stop sabotaging their life, and I will see you all in the next video. Stay brave.